Hello. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, mga ka-ABC, mga ka-awesome. Happy Tuesday and welcome to another episode of Daily R's where we read, reflect, and respond to the Word of God every single day. We do this reflection because it's important, very important for us to feed our spiritual bodies with spiritual food. We often compare it with our physical bodies, di ba? Ilang beses tayo kumakain, ganyan. Tapos, the importance of nutrition with our physical bodies to keep us healthy, keep us strong. Ganun din with our spiritual bodies. And we get our nutritious food from the Bible, where we read every single night. And dito tayo nagre-reflect at nagre-respond. Currently, we are in the book of 1 Kings at umpisahan na natin ang chapter 15 for tonight. At ang kasama ko mga co-host for tonight is Kuya Aldwin and Ate Kat. Ayun sila. Unahin kong kumustahin si Ate Kat. How was your Tuesday, Ate?
My Tuesday is very stressful. Pero normal naman na yun. Kakayanin pa rin. So, malamig. Malamig ang gabi. Kaya nakadoble-doble rin ako. Yan. Si Kuya O'Neil partida yan, no? Pero ayun, let's sabay-sabay po tayong magbasa, mag-reflect, and mag-respect sa word ng Panginoon ngayong gabi. Yun.
Ayun, going strong si Ate Kat. Strong Tuesday. Awesome. How about Kuya Aldwin? How are you?
Hello mga ka-ABC, awesome evening po. Yun, Tuesday is awesome. It's actually awesome na nakaka-pressure at some point. No? And actually, nasa preparation na rin po ako for my licensure exam as psychometrician. So yun yung time na nakaka-pressure at my part na baka hindi ko maipasa to pag board exam yun. Pero yun, I just need to trust myself then, and also God for that kind of overwhelming situation na pagdadaanan ko. And yun, as of now, just yun, focus tayo dito, mag-aaral tayo. And yun, samahan nyo kami mga ka-awesome to read, reflect, and respond for this tonight's discussion po.
Ayun, awesome. Thank you for the update, Aldwin. And don't worry, mga ka-awesome, diba? Let's pray for Kuya Aldwin for guidance as well and for strength. Kaya mo yan, Kuya Aldwin. Matatapos din yan. And ayun. Awesome yung mga kasama ko dito, mga kapatid ko dito. Kumusta naman yung sa comments? Dito na si Ate Leia. Siya pa lang nagko-comment. Bakit? And sabi ni Ate Leia, nasa YouTube siya ngayon. Happy daily hours, beautiful believers. Let's go. Good morning, afternoon, and evening. So it depends on anong oras nito pinapanood. Dahil meron din tayong mga team rebroadcast. Those who cannot tune in 9 p.m. Philippine time. Yun. So you can watch this anytime. And so si Ate Leia dito na. Thank you, Ate Leia, for continued support. And si Kuya Josh. Hello, Kuya Josh. Awesome na evening pa mismo. Si Mother Dear, good evening. Good evening, ma. Ayan. So sila pa lang ang nagko-comment. Konti pa rin lang ang nanonood. So hello sa inyo. Good evening sa inyong lahat. And while we wait for some others, let's talk about the recap from last night. Chapter 14, verses 19 to 31, which is focused in Rehoboam reigns in Judah. So, pull up ko lang yung verses from last night para may guide ako dito. So, ayun yan, no? Rehoboam's reigns in Judah. We have some of the discussion last night. Actually, but a big chunk of the discussion last night was focused on the impurity and the effects of the impurity in the nation of Israel. Kasi ngayon, dito sa part na to, medyo napukpok pa yung point na dahil nga dun sa mother din, may influence din kasi yun eh. Na yung mother ni Rehoboam was an Ammonite. So, meron na talaga, tainted na yung purity nila They were commanded to stay as pure as God's people, na dapat Israelites lang. No one from other tribes or other nations should be of their leadership, parang ganon. Pero kasi their king at that time, Rehoboam, nanay niya is not an Israelite. So, malaking risk, because they have their own practices, they have their own gods, and that's exactly what happened. In verse 22 hanggang verse 24, andun yung chunk of the, parang dun yung key verses eh. Kasi dito sabi niya, Judah did what was evil in the Lord's sight. They provoked him to jealous anger more than all that their ancestors had done with the sins they committed. So, ibig sabihin, in the reign of Rehoboam as king, dun yung pinakamalalang time wherein they committed sin against the Lord. And they provoked God to jealous anger because they worshipped other gods. Nagkaroon pa nga ng yung kulto ng mga male prostitutes because they worship these Asherah poles, which is a god of, ano sabi ni Kuya Jun, god of fertility, wherein they go to them to get kids, parang gano'n, mabuntis and whatnot. And that is not according to on how God governs his people in a way. Because nabasa naman natin throughout history, pag hindi sila magkaanak, they pray to God. And kahit barren na sila, di ba? Ang daming mga asawa dito hindi magkaanak, they pray to God. At nagkakaanak sila na ang dami-dami. And that has been the way ever since. And ngayon, they resorted to worshiping other gods, which is like idols, di ba? They are not gods. Ayun, and that provoked God to jealous anger. So verse 23, ito yung mga ginawa nila. They built themselves high places, sacred pillars. Ayun na nga, yung Asherah poles on every high hill and under every green tree. So wala na, tainted na yung land nila. There were even male cult prostitutes in the land. So imagine mo lang, di ba? Parang anong nakikita ng Diyos? Parang ang init sa mata, because these are the people he brought out of Egypt. He protected, provided for, and now they're worshiping other gods. So his jealous anger was parang tama lang, di ba? And that is God. He should be the one we worship. They be worshiping. Ayun. And then continuation of verse 24. They imitated all the detestable practices of the nations the Lord had dispossessed before the Israelites. So, yung mga sinusubukan nilang i-wipe out noon, mga ways of the Canaanites and all, dapat na yung inutos ni God na i-wipe out, really eradicate these pagan practices, these mga idol worshipers. They created a compromise, at dahil doon sa compromise na them still living with them, with the pagans, ito yung consequence of those, diba? At ito rin yung consequence of Solomon intermarrying with other nations, na wala yung purity. So now everything has been taken back by God. So in Solomon's time, they were rich, but in verse 25 onwards, kinuha ng king ng Egypt all their riches, di ba? Niransack niya, na-emphasize po yung gold into bronze. Sabi nga ni Kuya Jun, ginto na yan, naging tanso. Naging pretentious gold. Because why? They're no longer protected by God because of the unfaithfulness of Solomon. And God did mention that it's not in the time of Solomon na may experience a consequence. It is going to be experienced by his son. So, eto na nga, see, Rehoboam experiencing all the consequences, the penalty, and the punishment, a discipline of God. And then, ayun, so far ang napag-usapan, the biggest principle na napag-usapan last night was about yung purity. And tas napukpok pa ni Kuya Jun yung about marriage and partnership, which is also true, and it does not only stop with the partners. It's also with your friends, it is also with your family, it is also with your environment. Kung saan mo nilalagay yung sarili mo din, it's going to influence how it's going to influence your relationship with your God. So we have to protect that at all costs. Ayun. So we are godly people, so let us be with godly people as well. Ayan. And ang dami pang discussions from last night's reading. You can watch the video again here in this Facebook page, Awesome Believers Cross. It is also saved in our YouTube channel. And dito na rin si Tita Kot. Hello, Tita Kot. Good evening sa inyo. And tonight, we're going to proceed with chapter 15, verses 1 to 24. Ito na yung mga naging anak nila, si Abijam and Asa. And we're going to read about them in a bit. Or ngayon, kung ready na kayo mga ka-awesome, type awesome. And as always, I have volunteered myself to read the verses tonight. Ayan siya. Pero syempre, babasahin muna natin verses 1 to 8. Let's focus on Abijam's kingship muna para hindi tayo ma-overwhelm. So, type awesome, mga ka-ABC. And I also encourage you to bring out your Bibles, open it in this part. 1 Kings chapter 15, verse 1 to 24, and read with us. Ayun, si Mother nag-awesome na. Sige, uulan din yan kasi mahaba-haba yung reading. So, I'll go ahead mga ka-ABC. Verses 1 to 8 muna tayo. So, here's the reading. Judah's king Abijam. In the 18th year of Israel's king Jeroboam, son of Nebat, Abijam became king over Judah, and he reigned 3 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Maacah, daughter of Abishalom. Abijam walked in all the sins his father before him had committed, and he was not wholeheartedly devoted to the Lord his God, as his ancestor David had been. But for the sake of David, the Lord his God gave him a lamp in Jerusalem by raising up his son after him and by preserving Jerusalem. For David did what was right in the Lord's sight, and he did not turn aside from anything he had commanded him all the days of his life, except in the matter of Uriah the Hittite. There had been war between Rehoboam and Jeroboam all the days of Rehoboam's life. The rest of the events of Abijam's reign, along with all his accomplishments, are written in the historical records of Judah's kings. There was also war between Abijam and Jeroboam. Abijam rested with his ancestors and was buried in the city of David. His son, Asa, became king in his place. Ayun, so doon muna tayo, mga ka-ABC. Focus tayo kay Abijam and his kingship. So before I call on Kuya Aldwin to share his first insights, mga ka-awesome, share niyo din yung mga napansin niyo sa reading natin tonight in the comment section. Type it down. Babasahin ko yan. So, Kuya Aldwin, what have you noticed?
Hello po, yun. So, for my first observation here, and it's actually parang quick summary of Abijam, that as what mentioned earlier, that he was the son of Rehoboam. Tama ba? Sorry. Mali. He was the son of Jeroboam, and actually, tama ba ako?
Si Rehoboam. Tatay niya si Rehoboam.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Yun. We find here a quick summary of Abijam, the son of Rehoboam, or king of Judah, and actually he is the 5th king. No, from King Saul, King David, King Solomon, Rehoboam, and now Abijam. And as what I observed, that hindi niya na-hit yung mark dito, that which is the spiritual point, no. And as may elaborate pa siya when nung na-mention tong verse 3, na naalala ko rito yung sinabi ni Brother Jun kagabi sa last episode ng Daily nito, na napakalaki ng impluwensya ng godly or ungodly parents sa mga anak or sa offspring, which I totally agree about it, that parents have a huge influence on their child's growth. Na dalawa yung napansin ko rito na pwedeng maging cause or naging cause Una is yung attachment or yung attachment that the child got throughout the development. And yung pangalaw is yung pwedeng parenting style, although hindi kasi na-mention which kung ano yung parang pinaka-core about it. But yung parenting styles at saka yung attachment na na-perform when the child was growing. And hindi ko sinasabi na ito lang yung way na naka-impluwensya sa isang bata kasi in psychological approach, ang daming reason on how to shape the behavior of a child. Merong biological and environmental. However, as to reflect to the scriptures kasi, ito yung yung mga tumatak sa akin na when it mentioned to the verse 3 na sumunod siya sa masasamang halimbawa ng kanyang ama, na it clearly illustrates that the children are like sponges, that it is critical to provide good examples for children. They imitate and absorb all they receive or all they perceive and do within their parang naging ordinary routine na nito since yung years na ginugol ng paglaki ni Abijam is for sure na absorb niya and naging ordinary routine na to. And it is fundamental that parents provide a good example for their children because learning begins at home talaga. Or kailangan sa mga magulang magsimula yung teachings about it, that na yung consequences of it, that clearly that negative examples can have an adverse influence on a child's development and result in undesirable actions and behaviors. And see what happened here, that he had committed the same mistake as his father. They are not expected to be your yung mga magulang kasi hindi sila ina-expect na maging friend. Though wala namang mali kung tratuhin mo silang best friend yung mga anak. But however kasi as a parent, you are called to discipline them, to teach them what is right and wrong in God's eyes, to build the ground for work for purity and righteousness. So, doon po muna. Baka mapahaba mo. Dagdagan ko na lang po later. Yun po.
Awesome. Thank you, Kuya Aldrin. And I agree. Diba? So, andito yung responsibility dito. It's focused on the responsibility of Rehoboam as a father. Should have taught Abijam to not follow his footsteps in a way. But I guess hindi rin na-value ni Rehoboam yun, because if he did, di sana he ended his reign as king parang righteously. Sana may he went back to God in a way, pero hindi rin eh. So it was a bad example. Harsh to say, pero kasi yun yung nangyari eh, 'di ba? Harsh to say, but that's what happened. That he was not a good example for his son Abijam in this time. So I super agree in that, the responsibility of parents. Pero mamaya dadagdagan natin yan with kay Asa. Iba naman yung parang napaka-family oriented na itong babasahin natin for tonight. Yeah, so yun muna din sa akin, baka humaba eh. Ate Kat, what about you? Anong sharing mo for tonight?
Siguro a quick review sa kung nasan tayo ngayon. Kasi, di ba, medyo nawala rin ako from past sa verse 13 ata tayong rin pata yung co-host last week. Dito nag-start na maghiwalay ulit yung Israel. Nahiwalay si Judah from Israel. So, ngayon, pinag-uusapan natin yung kings ng Judah muna. Kasi, siguro bukas sa Israel naman tayo ang kings ng Israel. So, for tonight, si King Abijah naman. Parang si King Abijah compared naman sa other kings. Parang 3 years lang siya na nag-reign sa Jerusalem. Pero dito sa unang verses na binasa natin from verses 1 to 8, ang pinaka-tumatak sa akin or ang pinaka main verse para sa akin is yung verse 4. Sabi po doon, but for the sake of David, the Lord his God gave him a lamp in Jerusalem by raising up his son after him and by preserving Jerusalem. Yun nga, nasabi kanina ni Alvin, yung sa verse 3 na super negative. Abijam walked in all the sins his father before him had committed. Tapos talagang hindi siya, and he was not wholeheartedly devoted to the Lord. Malayong-malayo kung paano nag-walk si David kay Lord. Parang sobrang layo talaga. Pero, sabi sa verse 4, but for the sake of David, dito ko ulit nakikita yung grace ni Lord, yung unending grace niya, na despite yung kay Abijam, gagawa siya ng paraan para ma-preserve yung Jerusalem, para ma-preserve din yung lineage, tama ba? Kasi dito sa line ni David, manggagaling si Jesus. So, ayun. Andun yung grace ni Lord para meron nga sa isang kanta na our sin was great but the Lord's love and grace is greater. Parang ganun ata. Mas masasapawan ng grace ni Lord yung sin natin. Parang ganun yung nakikita ko dito sa part na to, sa verse 4, na gagawa ang Panginoon para lang ma-preserve ang Jerusalem. Yun lang po, that's for me.
Thank you, Ate Kat. So, na-highlightin yung nature ni God. So, from what Alduin and Ate Kat shared, na-highlight yung human weakness, but in our weakness, but we have our weaknesses as well. We have our flaws, our shortcomings. Mapupunuan kasi yun ng grace ni God. So, we have to acknowledge now that without God's grace, hindi natin kaya di ba? So, parang yung naririnig kong verse dito na naman, hindi ko alam yung word per word, but it's because of God's grace how we are saved. The grace we have received through Jesus. So, it's not by works talaga. Diba? It's by faith and by God's grace. And then, yung work is a response, our response for all of this, His love, mercy, and grace. Ayun, yung nasa verse 5 onwards, yung naka-highlight ng blue. Kasi andun yung work, andun yung response ni David. Diba? For David did what was right in the Lord's sight. Because knowing David, ano ba yung isinabuhay niya? He was, all his life, he was going after God's own heart. Yun yung purpose niya. So everything that he did, everything that he said, yun yung gusto niyang mangyari. Though, sabi din sa bandang huli, except in the matter of Uriah the Hittite. But still, the Lord made a covenant with him, which emphasizes that we don't have to be perfect. We just have to be wholeheartedly faithful to Him. Yun. So, magkaiba kasi yun Perfect is hindi ka makakagawa ng mali. Iba naman yung wholehearted na kahit alam mong mahina ka, you still choose to be with God. You still choose to worship Jesus. Magkaiba yun. So that's exactly what David did. And hanggang ngayon, patay na si David. Ilan na yung lumipas, we are still talking about him because how he lived his life, it was really admirable. So, bigat nung impact ng buhay ni David. Ayun. So before we move on sa verses natin tonight, batiin lang natin si Dad. Hello, Dad. Good evening, ABC, sabi niya. And si Kuya Arnel. Awesome evening din sa Kuya Arnel. Ayan. So, dito naman sa baba, verse 6. Dito wala masyado so he died. So apparently his entire life he was not wholeheartedly devoted to the Lord, and then he died. Tapos meron silang binabanggit na historical record of Judah's kings, but I don't know anong book to. But either way, they're all recorded there. And then he died, rested with his ancestors, and now here comes King Asa. Yung anak naman niya, anak ni Abijah or Abijam. So, basahin ko na mga ka-ABC. Unless may addition pa si Kuya Aldwin sa verses natin sa taas. Meron ka ba Kuya?
Yes, bro. Actually, I do agree about the insights about it. No, actually, nasabi na lahat siya. Na-emphasize na po siya. So, siguro proceed na lang po tayo for the next verses po.
Alright. Sige.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
Yun po, siguro from verses 7 to 8, I guess, that when the time of Abijam came naman, no, that uh, it is now destined for his son to ascend the throne, no. The story then moves on to King Asa, who replaced his father as ruler as the sixth king. Dun sa, or naging king dun sa time ni David, which is yung covenant uh yung word si God is truly accomplished at this part pa rin. And actually, I was really surprised about this part na when I read the story of King Asa earlier, no, nung inaral ko yung scripture na to, that um a decent he describes, parang nung impression ko here or observation ko, that he is a decent ruler, no, not perfect, but a good king. Kumbaga parang it's a matter of time na parang King Asa cleanses the land, yung land nila na merong mga ungodly doings, no, yung mga prostitution, yung false gods. He destroy even yung mga taong included doon sa mga wrongdoings na yun. And dito ko na-realize na even nakikita mo yung environment mo as literally not ideal environment to shape you as morally individual. You have a choice about it. Remember kasi from the time of King Solomon to Rehoboam to Abijam, ano yung napansin niyo? It parang naging cycle kasi. Naging cycle siya. Ano yung unang yung napansin, di ba? Parang what? No change at all. Parang naging cycle. And hindi ko sinasabi na like father, like son ito. Kasi hindi naman totally na kung ano yung puno siya yung bunga. Kasi ang daming pagkakataon, ang daming chance para hindi matulad. But see what happens here, parang walang usad kasi from the past rulers. Pero however, yung si King Asa, naging cycle breaker siya at this point, that I learned that any of us has the power to change anything. That we have the power to stand up and do better for change. And I want to share something about it, but it's actually very personal. Hindi ko siya ma-share. No, but to make the story short, no, we break that kind of cycle na kaming magkakapatid na lalaki. Na kasi nakita namin yung consequences about it, no? And it's actually parang same talaga yung situation na to from us, na ganun na nga yung lolo ko, gumaya pa yung father ko, and kami na nasaktan for that consequences. Alangan namang gayahin pa namin. So, kasi yung next generation ng nagiging critical kung magpapatuloy kasi yung ganito. So, sa part namin, kami mga lalaki, although hindi kami nag-usap na masinsinan for that part na okay, magkasundo tayo. Pero nakita kasi namin yung consequences about it, and gaano yung pain, gaano yung malalang epekto na dinulot nun. So, na parang ginawa namin yung part namin na hindi gumaya from the past cycle. And yun, in order for that part not to bring good for the sake of the next generation, we should start from us pa lang na mag-initiate to bring good. Imagine it, yung 41 years na pag-reign ni King Asa dito. Ang daming pagbabago na nangyari dito for sure. And what more pa kaya na hanggat buhay pa tayo, may mga magagawa pa tayo for this kind of opportunity na gawin kung ano yung tama. So yun po yung nakita ko dito, part with comparison from the past rulers and to this part na namuno na si King Asa. Yun po.
Thank you, Kuya Aldwin. And we can, yun nga, di ba? Yung comparison again, the comparison between kings and kanina, it focused on the father, being the example to the son. Kaso it didn't work because the father was in the wrong, so the son followed the father who is in the wrong. But yun nga, si King Asa was the trend breaker or the line breaker. He chose his own path. So basahin natin real quick. What did he do? How is he different from his father? So basahin natin real quick. So Judah's King Asa, in the 20th year of Israel's King Jeroboam. So sa reign ni King Jeroboam sa Israel, na 3 kings ang na-experience niya, which was Rehoboam, Abijam, and Asa. So 3 kings of Judah yung parang nakalaban niya. So Asa became king of Judah. And he reigned 41 years in Jerusalem. His grandmother's name was Maacah, daughter of Abishalom. So ito yung mga ginawa niya. Asa did what was right in the Lord's sight, as his ancestor David had done. He banished the male cult prostitutes from the land and removed all the idols that his ancestors had made. He also removed his grandmother Maacah from being queen mother because she had made an obscene image of Asherah. Asa chopped down her obscene image and burned it in the Kidron Valley. The high places were not taken away, but Asa was wholeheartedly devoted to the Lord his entire life. He brought his father's consecrated gifts and his own consecrated gifts into the Lord's temple, silver, gold, and utensils. There was war between Asa and King Baasha of Israel throughout their reigns. Israel's King Baasha went to war against Judah. He built Ramah in order to keep anyone from leaving or coming to King Asa of Judah. So Asa withdrew all the silver and gold that remained in the treasuries of the Lord's temple and the treasuries of the royal palace and gave it to his servants. Then King Asa sent them to Ben-Hadad, son of Tabrimon, son of Hezion, king of Aram, who lived in Damascus, saying, "There is a treaty between me and you, between my father and your father. Look, I have sent you a gift of silver and gold. Go and break your treaty with King Baasha of Israel so that he will withdraw from me." Ben-Hadad listened to King Asa and sent the commanders of his armies against the cities of Israel. He attacked Ijon, Dan, Abel-Beth Maacah, all the Chinnereth, and the whole land of Naphtali. When Baasha heard about it, he quit building Ramah and stayed in Tirzah. Then King Asa gave a command to everyone, without exception in Judah, and they carried away the stones of Ramah and the timbers Baasha had built it with. Then King Asa built Geba and Benjamin and Mizpah with them. The rest of all the events of Asa's reign, along with all his might, all his accomplishments, and the cities he built, are written in the historical record of Judah's kings. But in his old age, he developed a disease in his feet. Then Asa rested with his ancestors and was buried in the city of his ancestor David. His son, Jehoshaphat, became king in his place. So, yun nga yung nabanggit ni Adwin kanina. Siya yung parang game changer. He was faithful wholeheartedly to the Lord that caused him to, alam mo yun, wipe out everything that his ancestors had made, yung mga idols, mga ganyan. Tinanggal din niya yung lola niya, di ba? He also removed his grandmother Maacah from being queen mother. So, to be able to do that, talagang tinatry niyang linisin yung mga kamalian ng mga naging ninuno niya. Diba? So, it takes courage to do this, to change the trend, to choose your own path. But he did it right. So, ang galing, diba? Very admirable. Bago ko tawagin si Ate Kat for her sharing since sa kingship ni Asa, thank you muna tayo kay Kuya Arnel. Thank you for tagging Kuya Arnel. Awesome. Solid ka talaga. Ate Kat, anong sharing mo naman from Asa's kingship?
Tama ka, Kuya eh. Parang sobrang kailangan mo talaga ng courage sa ganto. Kasi yung mga nakasanayan ng gawin ng mga Israelites, syempre gagawin na nila kung ano yung gusto nilang gawin, kung sino yung gusto nilang i-worship, i-praise, mga idols, ganyan. And then, andito parating na si King Asa na buburahin lahat ng winorship mo. Siyempre, sino ba namang hindi magagalit, ganun. Pero, good job siya dito talaga kasi he banished the male called prostitutes. Talagang lininisan niya yung kung ano yung ayaw ng Panginoon sa Judah. Oo, sa Judah. And dito sa verse 13, yung tinanggal niya yung grandmother niya. Kahit kadugo niya, walang takas, ganun. Kasi syempre, ang sinusunod naman talaga dito ni Asa is the Lord. Sabi nga sa verse 14, di ba? The high places were not taken away, but Asa was wholeheartedly devoted to the Lord his entire life. So, nakafocus lang siya kung ano yung tamang gawin in the eyes of the Lord. So, maski yung grandmother niya, tatanggalin niya para lang talagang malinisan na ang Jerusalem. So, yun. That's my first. Tapos, second na rin po. Sige, yun po muna, kuya.
Sige. Thank you, Ate Kat. So, yun, di ba? The heart check, it matters. Kumbaga, it makes a huge impact in how we live our life, in the choices that we make. So, Asa was wholeheartedly devoted to the Lord his entire life. So, which caused him to do all these. Diba lahat to na-establish ng dalawang lolo, tatay niya tsaka lolo niya. At tsaka nung isa pa niyang lolo. Ay, hindi, si Solomon din niya ginawa. Ay, oo, si Solomon din, di ba? Paggawa din siya ng high places. So, tapos nilinisan niya. Because he wanted to worship the Lord and the Lord God only. Ayun. Tapos, ano pa ba? Ayun, wala na akong madagdag kasi super agree na ako sa point ni Ate Kat. And then, dito sa bandang baba, merong war. Now, dito, King Baasha of Israel, ibig sabihin, sa time ni Asa, namatay si Jeroboam. So, si Asa actually experienced 3 kings din naman. Pero he went to war with Baasha. Kasi may isa pang king before that, it's Nadab. But we'll read more about him in the future. But dito nakafocus si Baasha. And he was also wise dito sa part na to. And I bet matatamaan ni Kuya Alduin yan. So tawagin ko na siya. Kuya Alduin, what about in this part? Anong masashare mo dyan?
Yun po, in verses 15 to 17, dito na lumitaw yung conflict for power between the northern kingdom of Israel and the Judah continues, nagpatuloy. So, patunay lang na that God still parang punishing on this the Israel yun. And Baasha acquired parang something an advantage during Asa's reign, no, by essentially blocking a vital route into Judah and Ramah, which is parang naging smart siya actually at this part, to keep people from leaving or entering the territories of Judah. That he anticipated that putting this kind of parang strategy, parang binablock kasi nila yung military, parang military and economic, or parang yun yung gusto nilang palabasin, yung military and economic hardship would push King Asa to make considerable compromises. And naalala ko na naman yung history about it, no, that yung how Japanese attacked the Pearl Harbor para ma-compromise yung military forces ng kabilang ng Americans papunta ng Philippines. And I also notice here that I don't know if I mag-agree kayo sa akin or what, but I noticed here that parang he something make a mistake in this part, that Asa wanted Ben-Hadad rather than God, or seeking or asking God for this kind of situation na may warning na or may threat na for the other, or for the northern or for the southern tribes from um northern tribes, or yung pinamumunuan ni King Baasha. And clearly, um clearly Baasha kasi of Israel could not stand alone against Judah, so he needs serious assistance. And hindi ko alam, or hindi na mention dito that um anong reason bakit uh hindi ni-refuse or parang pinili ni King Asa yung assistant from other nation. So from a political standpoint, parang King Asa looks to have made the right option. However, in some sense that he was in parang serious trouble kasi una, he arbitrarily detached goods so devoted to God. Kinuha niya yung mga treasures na nandoon. And second, he acted out of parang something mistrust whose power and kindness he had recently experienced. Kumbaga, he trusts in man when they should trust in God. And we all know that God asks us to rely only on Him po. So, yun po muna sa part po na yun ang na-observe ko.
Awesome. Thank you, Kuya Alvin. Totoo din, no, na kasi yung mga yun, before this happened, by the way, ito, highlight lang natin, he brought his father's consecrated gifts and his own. Tapos, inoffer niya yun to the Lord's temple. All the silver, gold, and utensils. So, dapat kay Lord na yun, di ba? Kaso dito sa verse 18, binawi niya. Imbis na, di ba, he should have like asked from the Lord na for help for what's going on or guidance. What he did was, ayun, binawi niya. He took all that remained in the treasuries of the Lord's temple. Tapos, yung inoffer niya kay the king of Aram to make a treaty with them, to have an alliance with them para matalo nila si King Baasha. So, in that part, it was wise. Secularly, is that the right term? It was wise. Politically, ayun, gamitin ko yung term ni Aldwin. Pero, spiritually, hindi niya na-honor si God in that way because hindi siya umasa kay God. So, yes, he did. Was faithfully, he was wholeheartedly devoted to God. But then, ito lumilitaw na naman yung weaknesses ng tao. So, yun. Dagdag ko lang dun sa comment ni Kuya Aldwin. And si Ate Kat, baka may ma-share siya dyan. Alam ko meron eh.
Oo, meron. Dadagdagan ko lang din. Siguro, naisip na ni King Asa na maganda sa mata ni Ben-Hadad tong mga to, kaya ibibigay ko sa kanya yung silver and gold. And nangyari naman, siguro gusto niya yung gold and silver. Kaya, inaccept niya na para matulungan din si King Asa sa ma-withdraw yung yung cities. Ma-withdraw yung treaty niya with King Baasha. So, yun yung nakita ko dito. Siguro yun na yung unang pumasok sa utak ni King Asa, tapos binigay niya na agad kay King Baasha para lang. Pero walang nasabi no na nagalit si Lord gano'n. Pero yun nga, mali rin din kasi binigay niya tapos binawalin lang. Parang gano'n. Yun po.
Yun. And I agree. So, ang parang nakikita ko dito malaking principle is that magulo na naman yung land nila. They are divided. Tapos, kakalinis lang niya. It's going to be a struggle again because they are being disciplined again by the Lord because of Solomon's doing. Ito yung consequence of that. They can keep trying, but the Lord's discipline is strong. Diba? It's very strong to really make them remember of all of these. And in reflection, tayo din, diba? Na when we receive God's discipline, and when we feel guilty, mga ganyan, of our mistakes, our sins, no? Mahirap, masakit, di ba? Tumatakbo sa utak mo yung mga nagawa mo, tapos nagsisisi ka, di mo matakasan, di ba? So it's the same thing. For us, sana na hindi tayo ma-desensitized in continuously sinning. Kahit mababaw lang na lying. Di ba? Nakakonsensya tayo kahit ang babaw. Ang dali lang nung sinungaling mo eh. Pwede mo rin bawiin anytime. Pero nakakonsensya ka, di ba? Hindi ka matahimik. So, paano pa yung mga mabibigat na consequences like having other gods? So, when God disciplines, He truly disciplines. But that does not mean, again, sabihin ko lang yung sinabi ko noon, that He hates them. No, He's humbling them. Sabi nga niya, kay time pa ni Ahijah, ni Solomon yun. He's going to humble them. And may comment tayo from Tita Kot. Awesome. Thank you, Tita Kot. Sabi niya, going back, there will be times when our loyalty to God will alienate us from family and friends. So that's in verse 13. Balikan natin siya. So verse 13, he also removed his grandmother Maacah. Yung lola niya, tinanggal niya from being queen mother. Kasi naman, ang ginawa nung lola niya, she had made an obscene image of Asherah. So, bahala na kayo mag-google. Ano yan? Asherah na yan. So Asa chopped down her obscene image and burned it in the Kidron Valley. Yun. So, there will be relationships, there will be compromises or sacrifices that will be made, that will have to happen when we follow God. But Jesus also, hindi naman nagkulang din si Jesus sa reminder na to na when we follow Him, maraming mangyayari, maraming magbabago. But di rin nagkulang si Jesus in reminding us that it's all going to be worth it. Ang pinaka-importanting choice na mapagdesisyon na natin is yung pag-follow kay Jesus. It's going to be tough while we live here on earth, but once everything's done, it's all worth it. It's all worth the sacrifice, and yeah. So, meron talaga tong sacrifice na to, Tita Kot, and yeah, I agree. Ayun. And there. Tawagin ko ulit si Kuya Aldwin. May addition ka pa ba dito, Kuya Aldwin?
Actually, bro, nasabi na po lahat, and I do agree for the insights of everyone here. No? So, yun, wala na pong addition about it, bro.
Ayun. All right. So, I think we are ready for our responses and takeaways. So, that's so far ang nangyari. King Abijam, depende sa version, and King Asa. Very, contrasting kingship and character. So makaka-awesome anong takeaway nyo sa reading natin for tonight. Type nyo lang dyan sa comment section. I will read them. And tawagin ko muna si Kuya Aldwin to share his responses for tonight. Go ahead, Kuya.
Siguro po, yun, I have two that I realized then that even parang kahit na Old Testament to, that we need to pay attention towards something very important that God is teaching us. No, first yung as a parent or parent figure, that it is essential how cautious we must be as parents. That many people have noticed that children are just like tabula rasa, or like a blank slate, or blank pieces of paper about which their parents or the environmental influence them. The question is not whether we should write, but what we're going to write. We may not realize how much our behavior affects our or yung mga younger family members. So let's be aware of that kind of behavior na ipapakita natin na parang i-mold sila about it. And we all have that kind of opportunities to influence children toward God at some point in our lives. So we need to establish that the purity, the righteousness about it, and need nating ipakita kung ano yung tamang path na dapat nilang lakaran. So for my second is yung be completely devoted, but also truly or truly committed to God up to the end. So yun, that today make a concerted of this kind of effort to serve God and to put something assurance to obey Him, to be a game changer about it. That just like King Asa, that um, despite of what past na meron, hindi iyon sapat na reason para maging ganun ka rin at the end. So, lahat tayo may opportunities to change at that part, and lahat tayo pwede tayo mag-stood up for the better something para din sa ah, ah, para din sa kalagayan ng ibang tao. Yun po.
Awesome. Thank you, Kuya Aldwin. How about Ate Kat?
Medyo parehas na parehas kay Aldwin. Pero yung pinaka sa akin is yung being devoted to the Lord. And yun kasi yung pinag-aaralan namin every Sunday. And nalaman ko na ang devotion. Kasi pag sinabi mong devotion, for me personally, parang yun yung gagawin mo every morning. Pagkagising mo, mag-pray ka, mag-devote ka, magbabasa ka ng Bible. Tapos ganun din sa gabi, ganun. Pero more than that pa pala yung meaning ng devotion. So yung devotion mo kay Lord is, it includes yung pagtulong mo sa tao, pagtulong mo sa kapwa, yung verse na if you love me, you love others. Yung ganun. What you do to others. What do you do to me, you do to others. Parang ganun. Yun yung nakita ko sa life ni King Asa. Kasi, kung talagang inuna mo si Lord sa buhay mo, lahat na susunod, kumbaga, katulad nung si King David, pabalik naman tayo sa kanya, finalo niya lahat ng commands ni Lord. And then, ganun din si King Asa, wholeheartedly na finalo niya si Lord. So, tignan natin yung effect ng ginawa niya dun sa binasa natin sa verse 9 hanggang 25. Diba? Nung finalo niya si Lord, ganito yung nangyari. Nalinisan lahat. Which is, for sure, maganda sa paningin ng Panginoon. So, yun. Yung parang pinaka-main point niya para sa akin is talagang dapat maging devoted tayo sa Panginoon. Sobrang hirap nito as in. Kasi andito pa tayo sa mundong to. But we strive, we make every effort to cleanse ourselves araw-araw and be devoted with the word of the Lord. Yun po, kuya.
Thank you, Ate Kat. And pag pinagsama natin yung dalawa, it impacts life, di ba? Having the courage to carve your own path, not to break the trend and emphasize ni Aldwin, which is very important. No, basagin na natin yung tradition na hindi siya beneficial. Yung mga ganyan. Yung mga ways of the past, let's continue to progress, mga ganun, no? So that we move forward. We don't repeat the same mistakes, because if we continue to do the same tradition, the same practices, the same mentality and perspective, we will eventually do the same mistakes, diba? So we move forward, we evolve, we improve, because personally I believe God created us. We are very capable people, human beings, creatures, and we are limited by our own minds. So when we progress, when we break all these traditions and trends, we progress and we serve our Lord even more. Because Paul also emphasized on that, diba? We can do more. We can do more. We can do more for the Lord. And how do we motivate ourselves by doing to do that? we devote ourselves. We devote ourselves to the Lord. Na-emphasize, which is very important. Na-emphasize ni Ate Kat. Because without that devotion, without that goal of pleasing God, wala, mapapagod tayo. Why am I doing this? Diba? What is it for? Without that devotion, hihinto na lang ako, nakakapagod na. But knowing that we are serving God, a God that is so good, a God that loves us, it's all gonna be worth it. Ayun, so solid. Wow. Solid sharing mga ka-ABC, mga kapatid, Ate Kat and Kuya Alduin. And dito, si Kuya Arnel, mahina daw signal niya. Okay lang yan, Kuya. Panoorin mo lang pag malakas na. Nakapag-tag ka naman na. So, solid. Thank you. Si Dad, meron siyang comment. We can be wholly devoted but under-committed. We never worship foreign gods, but we didn't worship the true God as much as we should have. O yun, diba? We are capable to do more. So, we can be devoted in the head, but we don't do them. We don't act upon it. It's like, it's all in the head, but it's not our lifestyle. So, it doesn't matter. It has no effect. So, you have to live up to it, just like how Asa did, right? When he devoted himself to the Lord, he acted upon it. Diba? Nilinis niya, tinanggal niya yung lola niya sa posisyon. Medyo na-ano ako doon eh. Nakaya niya, diba? So, it cost him to do all those good things because he devoted himself to the Lord. So we can be wholly devoted but under-committed. So when we are committed, we act upon it. So thank you for this, Dad. This makes sense. We have to put our words into actions as well. It's a lifestyle. Yun. And, ayun, I think that's it. Wala nang nagko-comment. May 2 minutes pa. May 2 minutes pa kayo mga ka-ABC. Habol nyo lang yung comments nyo. So while that is our reading for tonight. Focused on Asa and Abijam. Marami pa tayong Kings na mababasa. Well, it is the book of Kings. So expected na yan. So we're going to continue reading chapter 15 bukas ng gabi. Same time, 9 p.m. onwards, dito pa rin sa Awesome Believers Cross Facebook page and YouTube channel. And thank you, Ate Kat and Kuya Alduin again for your sharings, for your service tonight. Kayo din mga ka-ABC for reflecting with us. And as always, stay healthy, stay safe, stay dry, and stay with Jesus, stay awesome. And let's continue to shine the light of Jesus wherever we may be. Continue to love so that the love of Jesus will be seen in us. God bless mga ka-ABC. And, of course, don't forget to pray. Bye-bye.